Good morning. My name is Tanishka. Welcome to Orchard Park Secondary School, home of the FRC Team 2056. If you have any questions throughout the day, please feel free to ask me. I would like to introduce to you our next speaker, Hassan and Caleb from 2056, presenting How to Scout an FRC Event.
Welcome to How to Scout an FRC Event. Just going to quickly go over the agenda. But first, my name is Caleb. I'm a third year mechanical and management engineering student at McMaster. This is going to be my 7th year on the team and my 3rd year mentoring.
Hey everyone, I'm Hassan. I do strategy for the team, scouting and strategy. It's my 3rd year on the team. Before 2056, I was a mentor on Team Dave. Before Team Dave, I was an alumni of Team 1241. So I've been around the block quite a bit. I graduated from university in 2021, so it's been a while since I've been out of school, but I'm planning on going back to school. That's a little bit about myself. And back over to you.
Yep, so our agenda for the day. First, we're going to talk about what is scouting and the importance of scouting. Then we're going to talk about the 2 different types of scouting, quantitative, qualitative, the benefits of both and how you can combine them together. Then we're going to go over a little bit about how we use our scouting system at an event. And then we're going to talk about resource management.
All right, so let's go over what is scouting. We're going to briefly go over scouting. Scouting is a part of FRC that is really brushed under the rug quite often, more often than not, because like teams are very focused on, I want to perform, I want to do everything that I can. They don't necessarily focus on the bigger aspect of the FRC event, which is it's a team game. You have 2 other teams that are going to be competing with you that define what success is going to be at an event. So what is scouting? Scouting is basically understanding your competitors. Scouting is your alliance insights. It is what scouting allows is for strategy optimization. It helps a lot in alliance selection. Observation of robot performance, looking at the teams that are competing at an event, and being able to identify what are some positives, what are some negatives, what are some every single thing about a robot. Very important to track. Collection of numerical performance metrics. Robotics does this very well. A lot of teams have their own scouting systems that they implement. We have our own scouting system that we implement. And we're going to go through this in the resource management section as well, of how you can optimize that. And then last but not least, which is very important, is informed decision-making for strategy. So this enhances the ability to make strategic match decisions, helps your team be prepared, helps your coach be prepared, helps your drive team be prepared, and also allows you to synergize between yourself and your 2 other alliance partners. So quickly going over the importance of scouting. So it allows you to make smart data-based decisions. It helps you assign roles in matches. So as we had our 2024 game, my bad. Very, very focused on strategy, because based off of strategy, you could really change the amount of points that you were scoring. You can amplify your speaker, and that would allow you to score 5 points instead of, what was it, 2? So 5 points instead of 2. So it's essentially, you would get 24 points for scoring 6 notes. On the other hand, if there was no strategy, you would get 12 points. So there's quite a big variance. Being able to make those smart database decisions, assigning roles in match. Is there going to be somebody passing? Is there somebody playing defense? What are the metrics that help us define those? Planning against opponents. So if you're scouting and you're scouting every team on a field, or even if you're not scouting, if you're using tools like Robotics, how can you use the numbers that you're seeing there? How can you use the data that you're seeing there to plan against the opponents that you're going to be facing? And very importantly, picking the right alliance based off of the numbers that you have, based off of the data they've collected. How do you pick the alliance that meshes well with you? Or if you're picked by someone, how do you mesh well with them? How do you understand how your robot performance is, how their robot performance is, and then synergize to ensure that you guys are walking down the path towards a successful event? In terms of match, it allows your drive team and your coach to adjust on the fly, having an idea of what the opponent's capabilities are, what your capabilities are, so on and so forth. The other thing with scouting as well is it allows you to learn from other robots. So FRC is a program of continuous development. A robot that's been developed for week 1 might not be the exact same as a robot that you compete with at DCMP. There might be improvements that come throughout. If you're scouting and you're scouting every single detail or as much as you can then learn from other robots that are perhaps doing things better than you in certain areas. You can find synergies between teams. So when I mentioned 2024's game, if we had a really good robot that was amping and we had another really good robot that was doing speaker, we could figure out a strategy. Well, the strategy team could figure out a very good strategy based off of the data that we've collected. Last but not least, you take out the guesswork completely. There was a time when vibes would be a main factor of how do you go about an event. That time is long gone. We have a lot of metrics that we could use. We have a lot of data that you could use. Robotics is very useful. Again, not the only thing that you should rely on, but your own quantitative metrics, your own qualitative metrics, those are some of the things that you should always be focused on to take out the guesswork in terms of how a match is going to go, or how an event's going to go, or how a team is going to perform, so on and so forth.
So now we're going to talk about quantitative type of scouting. For those of you that don't know, this is using data rather than the qualities of a robot. So very important, before any event at the start of the season, you need to determine the methods of scoring in a match. This is more often than not in the game manual. Things like for this year, shooting in the speaker, amp, trap, climbing. Those are your main methods of scoring, and those are the most important ones that you need to track. This is very good for, also helps with predicting strategies. So one big example this year is the rise of passing throughout the season. That it's not a very clear way of scoring points, but by the end of the season, it was a fundamental way to play the game, to get notes into the speaker faster. And doing this before an event can keep your process throughout the whole season very smooth. You don't have to, if your goal is to create an app, you don't have to worry about adding lots of things in later. Halfway through the season, you get lots of time to actually develop it, and your scouts, they get to work with it a lot more. At an event, this is tracking matches, tracking the events that teams do, or the events that happen in a match, scoring, amping, where they pick up pieces. That's the part of quantitative scouting. Another part is knowing your limits. Events are very long. They can be very hard on your scouts if they don't have practice or if there's not enough people to do every match. Taking breaks is very important, and you shouldn't sacrifice the mental health and the ability of your scouts to track lots and lots of different data over the quality of data you can collect. If you can get really high quality data, but maybe it's not super high level or super advanced, that's still very good, and you should be able to work with that. Pass it off back to Hassan.
All right, so we're going to be going over a few different factors. We're going to be going over key factors in quantitative scouting. We're going to go over how to do quantitative scouting, the benefits of quantitative scouting, and then the rise of robotics, something that we've mentioned a few times in the presentation already. So, key factors in quantitative scouting. Very, very high level, like Caleb mentioned, it is something that you can identify based on the game manual and the game animation alone. Essentially, what that means is your number of points scored, number of game pieces picked up, number of game pieces scored, success rate in completing tasks, and basically every permutation that you could think of with any of those 3 points mentioned. So when I mean game pieces picked up, if we're thinking back to our 2023 game where we had multiple different areas we could pick up a game piece from. We had the single substation, which slides down the cone or the cube. We had a double substation, which essentially had a corner of a cube put on a shelf. You can think of it as game piece pickup, but having it split down into the elementary steps allows you more freedom in terms of collecting data, but also allows you to understand what a team's capabilities are, whether a team is highly capable at picking up from one certain location or multiple different locations. The other thing is scoring. Not having data on just scoring alone is sometimes not enough. You have to be able to split that out by the elementary steps of where does this team score. We have examples of teams this year that were very, very quick at picking up a game piece, coming back and scoring. However, there would be cases where they're an amp-only robot. So they're only scoring in the amp. They're not scoring in the speaker. And that can be beneficial from some strategy perspectives, but those are some of the things that you need to know beforehand, and you need to have brainstormed in your scouting meetings that this is the kind of information that we want to collect. We want to be able to break it down. We want to be able to break all three of these down by their elementary steps. Now, how do you do quantitative scouting? Depends on your resources. Very much so. It depends on where you are, how many scouts you have. But essentially, you can create a data sheet or an app. 2026, we do an app. You track specific metrics for each team during every match. Essentially, those three metrics, those three things, the key factors that I talked about, and you're breaking it down into elementary steps. You scout as many matches as possible for any given team, taking your resources into account. Like Kayla mentioned, you can't stress, we can't stress this enough, but like breaks are important. Events are very, very long. So taking your resources into account, how do you scout as many matches as you can? Analyze trends, looking for patterns, consistent high scores, or improvement over time, outliers, stuff like that. Those are some of the things you have to keep in mind. And when you're building a scouting system, to ensure that you have the ability to track those metrics and those trends. Let's talk about some benefits of quantitative scouting. Like we mentioned earlier, data-driven decision-making. You take out the guesswork. If you know that a team is averaging 7 notes scored per game, you can expect them to score 7 notes scored per game. If they've been doing it for the past 10 matches, in the off chance something goes wrong, which at times things do go wrong, there might be a situation where they don't score 7 notes or 7 game pieces a game. But more likely than not, your data is not gonna betray you. So you take out the guesswork there. Which comes into my second point, which is educated predictions and outcomes using data. Based off of averages, you can kind of figure out how a match is gonna go. And what that allows you to do is, once you give that data to the strategy team, they can try figuring out strategies to overset those outcomes. Whether that's playing defense, whether that is trying a different strategy that the teams have not tried before. It allows easily synergies to be able to form between teams. If you have clear data that states that a team is better at doing auto from this side versus the other side, you can synergize between the different teams. You can look at the data and take out the guesswork of, okay, my auto runs 50% of the times. The other team's auto runs 100% of the times. I think it's a better idea to go with their auto over our auto. Those decisions can only be made if you have accurate data supporting your thesis. And most importantly as well, it really helps in line selection. Line selection, as we've progressed, Robotics has played a huge role in this. But the other thing as well with data and quantitative data, and the earlier point that I mentioned is breaking everything down into elementary steps. It allows you to really focus on developing an alliance which meshes well with the capabilities of your robot. Or if you're picked, you get picked for your capabilities of meshing well with the alliance captain. There might be cases where the most scoring robot does not get picked over a specialist robot. And that can only be identified with scouting. And last but not least, one of the most hot topics of scouting as of 2023 is statistics. This is where we come into resource management a little bit. It's for teams across the entire resource spectrum. Whether you have one scout, whether you have 20 scouts. 20 is a very large number, by the way. I don't think any team has 20 scouts. Let's say 7 scouts. 7 is a good number. Statistics is an extremely important tool that you don't need to put any input into statistics. It gives you everything anyways. However, the use of statistics to help drive is only to help drive conversation and give you some kind of direction. You should not rely on statistics alone. You should always have your own scouting system in place, whether that's tracking quantitative data, whether that's doing quantitative scouting, or whether that's doing qualitative scouting. You should always do your own research before you rely on something off the internet. I'm going to stop there for a quick moment. Does anyone have any questions? All good? All right, we'll pass it back over to Caleb then for qualitative scouting.
So next up is qualitative scouting, and this is basically a non-data type of scouting. You're describing what a robot does in some way or another. So what to look for? One really big part of it that happens at an event but before any matches is pit scouting. This is what we do is we go around to every team before on the first day on load-in, and we ask for information about the robots, about their team. For example, we're looking about how big their robot is. We're looking at what sort of stuff they build it out of, how well it's built, what's the electrical management like. We also ask about their drive team, their experience, how much practice they get, lots of things that could be really useful later in an event if you need to ask for a specific thing. And let's say you want to go ask them at their pits, but then they're in a match. If you have that pit scouting data, you can just look at it and on your own time, and it's way faster. One thing you can look for in a match is robot build quality. You're looking at things like how often do they break? Does it seem like they kind of sit around for a while, like something's wrong with the robot? This can be really important data where when it comes to something like alliance selection, if you have 2 teams that look exactly the same with their numbers, but one of them breaks every other match and the other one doesn't, if the issue is not fixable, you take the team that does the same numbers without breaking because you can rely on them. You know you're not going to lose a match because something unlucky goes wrong. Also in qualitative scouting, driving abilities. This is something that really can't be captured in numbers. You can see how many points a team puts up. You can see it on StatBotics how high their EPA is, but they can still not look great on the field. Things you want to look for is how smooth do they look? Do all their pickups, their shots, all their climbing, does it look like they don't make a mistake in any of that? And eventually at the highest level, are they able to do it not just smooth, but also fast? This is also useful for anti-stratting. When it comes to the limbs, being able to watch an other alliance and understand some of the things they do, like tendencies. What strategy are they playing? Are they playing double cycling? Are they passing a lot? And how they do that, like where do they pass from? There were some teams that passed right from the source, some teams that passed on the wing line by the source, and some teams that passed under the stage. And knowing where they pass from can be really helpful for playing defense and on how to counter them. So how to do it for each of those things, you go around the pits and you ask the mechanical team and the people in their pits, just ask them questions about anything you would want to know about the robot. This definitely takes some experience to learn what sort of things to ask, but you can find resources online of people that provide pit scouting sheets. And that's a really good starting place for that. For watching a match, you just take a pen and paper, jot down some notes of what the team does, and then by the end of the event, you can collectively bring that all together and have a pretty good idea of what a team is capable of doing. Take a note of things, no matter how small they may seem. If it seems like something that doesn't seem important now, it could be important later. One example could be if on their pickups they take a bit of time to do it. That could be, if they take an extra second, that could be time for a defensive robot to get in there and prevent them from getting out to go score the cycle. Another thing is vibes do play a big role in qualitative scouting. If you are watching a robot and they just feel good, they look good out there, but you can't really put your finger on it, that's still important to note down because there's probably something there and you just haven't realized it yet. All this to say, data is still important. If you only have qualitative scouting, it's only going to get you so far. But if you combine it with data, whether that's your own or something like the Statbotics, that can be really powerful and helping you with general match strategy, alliance selection, everything like that. So I'm going to pass it back off to Hassan. He's going to talk about how to combine both a little more.
All right, so combining scouting, both types of scouting. We've talked about it quite a lot, quantitative scouting, qualitative scouting. Now let's talk about combining both types. What does it achieve? It achieves optimizes alliance selection. Now, if you have qualitative data and you have quantitative data, you know what your alliance is capable of. You know how you feel about the alliance before an elims match. You know what kind of strategy you can run based off of both pieces of information that you have. It allows for the second piece, which I really like, is more strategic gameplay. So there's a lot of strategy that goes in a match before, at an event, before every match. We do it. Almost every other team does it. It's a lot of fun as well. Having more data gives you more options to play with, because you can prove whatever crazy idea there is that it could work, it might not work. You can mitigate risk wherever possible. And the most important fact, balance between fact and intuition. It's, if you have qualitative data only, you have only vibes, you only have intuition to go off of. If you have quantitative data only, you only have facts to go off of. But qualitative and quantitative allows you to really combine intuition and fact together. So do I have any questions so far? I guess I can quickly go over how do we combine both the data together. So what we usually do is we have a set of scouts that are doing quantitative data scouting, right? And we're going to go through in detail of how we actually do scouting, but a quick note of how we combine both of these metrics together. We have our quantitative scouts scouting based off of our scouting app. What we have on the other side is we have mentors and scouts, mentors and students on the team who are literally jotting down notes of what they find cool about a team. And then before every match, what I do is I look at the data and then I look at the notes that every scout has written for a team. Because there might be cases where you see the numbers of a team, let's say they average 5 game pieces a match. However, they have scored 10 game pieces a match in one match, 0 game pieces in another match, 10 in another match, 0 in another match. So 5 average does not give me the full big picture. But if I go in the notes, I can see, okay, these guys, they ran this auto, so they died. Or these guys had a big collision, so they died. So what I can do with that, both pieces of information, is I can really work on a strategy that can optimize that team's performance and take into account their highs and really try to factor that into my strategy. Instead of going for the 5s, I can try aiming for the 10. If I don't get the 10, it's fine. But at least we're trying to achieve something based off of information, additional pieces of information that we have. That is essentially a very, very quick, brief overview of how can you combine both of those quantitative and qualitative scouting together. I'm going to pass it over to Caleb, to kind of go over how does Tim come into scout?
Yeah. So this is going to be an overview of the system we use and how we develop it at the start of the season and throughout the season. So first, like I said before, we want to figure out all the possible ways of scoring or contributing points to an alliance. What are the different ways to score points? Speaker, amp, trap, climb, and also passing. That's another big one that isn't necessarily written down. We want to break each individual action down into the elementary steps. So you want to go score a speaker note. What does the team have to do? First, they have to drive somewhere. Then they have to pick up a note. Then they have to drive back, and then they can shoot it. So the events that we would sort of track there is the pickup and the shot, and the time in between would be tracked. And that's also another important part of figuring out the cycle time of an alliance or of a team. And you can use this to, maybe a team doesn't have great numbers, like they're averaging, say, just 7 notes in a match. And that's all they can get, including auto. But you look at their cycle time, and if you were to extrapolate that over a whole match, you can see that they should actually be scoring 11, 12. And you can use that to figure out, like Hassan was saying before, you can figure out what sort of strategies were they doing in the matches that caused their cycle time to be lower. Were they playing against defense? This is by breaking down these steps, you can, in your data later, you can identify some strengths and weaknesses of teams. So yeah, that's how we identify metrics we want to track. Then we develop an app. We're not really here to talk about the development of the app, but some goals we have in mind for that is we want the scouts, we want it to be intuitive for the scouts. We want them to be able to practice it and learn it fairly easily. And that way, when they get to an event, they're not asking, what does this button do? I don't know what to press if this happens in the match. We want to minimize the amount of unknowns for them and have them focused on tracking the match and getting the best data they can. Then our head scout, after a match, is all done. He has an iPad that scans a QR code that we generate on all the scouts' iPads for their match data. He scans a QR code and pastes that into a master spreadsheet, which you will see in a little bit. So here's some pictures of our app. If you can't see it that well, that's fine. I'll explain it. So at the start, you have the starting position of the robot, what we call just 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this is important because we want to see where teams start to for our individual match strategy going into any matches. We want to see where do they start from so that we can optimize the best auto for our alliance. Then after you pick the spot, you enter the match number, your name, that sort of stuff. The match starts and you start selecting what auto notes they go for. What we called 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those are the wing lines and the ones in your wing. So that's just auto. Then once we get to the middle of the match, we have this is our note pickup screen. So this is what I was talking about in keeping it intuitive. If your alliance if you're picking up something close, maybe a note dropped from, you shot it, you missed it, and then you pick it up again. You put that in as close, and it's intuitive for the scouts because it's right there. It's where the event happened, and they don't have to think about it. Then we have midfield. This is, let's say, you're getting defended, or a robot is getting defended in the source. They can't get out to the midfield, so they just shoot a note over so that their alliance partners can grab it in the midfield. That's an example of a note that could end up there, and to track it, you just click in the midfield. And then the easiest place and most common to get notes is the source, and our button for that is right on the source. Then for shooting, this is a little harder to make because a lot of you can shoot in the speaker from pretty much anywhere, but it's still, we still try to keep it intuitive. So we have amp on the amp, trap on the trap, speaker from the podium where the protected shooting is, because we wanted to identify if a team needs to go to the podium in order to shoot versus if they can shoot from anywhere. That's a really important piece of information to have, especially come eliminations. And then speaker far and speaker close. We tried to keep those close to the speaker, but also had to make room for other things as well. These buttons on the side, this was something we added this year for our scouts that have the iPads to track matches. We wanted to include a little more qualitative data with what they already tracked. So this is things like, we have a crown that's just good. You did a great job in a match, or they did something really good or really cool in that moment. And we can go back and we have timestamps of when the events happened, and we can, if a team gets a lot of these, we can go look at what they're doing that's really good. We have good driving. I don't remember what that one is, but it's probably good. We have a passing button because at the start of the season we didn't identify that as an important method of the game later on, and so that was something we added in later in order to, because it was also a very fundamental part of how we played, and so that was something we really wanted to track. We have dumb, died. That's also really important for the decision making on a field for qualitative, is how often does a team do something that they probably shouldn't do, or do they just die and they can't go anywhere. It's an important thing to track that. Our scouts, we have 6 scouts watching, 1 for each robot, and for our qualitative scouts outside of this, we don't have as many that are actively watching each robot, so the scouts with the iPads are very clearly watching one robot, and they can easily track the events of one team. After,
any questions, by the way?
Yeah, any questions about that?
App?
Yes. No, it's not available publicly, as far as I know.
Any other questions?
How do you exactly transfer the data to the spreadsheet? It's just the QR code?
Yep. So the QR code, it creates such a very long, CSV basically, just one line, and then each QR code from each scouting iPad just adds another line to it, and then that data is our head scout has a shortcut on his iPad, and that shortcut would help him put it, he could copy and paste it into our not this sheet, but one we have that's way too many columns to show and actually be helpful. And then what we do from that after it's pasted is we create this. It's a big sortable spreadsheet, very hard to read, but this is auto stuff. So crossing the line in auto, their shots, their misses, their drops, and then we create how many points do they get on average. And this is similar to what the StatBotics auto tab would be, but from the data that we track ourselves. Then we have all the scoring in teleop, so things like amp scores, trap scores, speaker scores, and we split it into close, far, and podium for all of them. And we have the average time that it takes from a pickup to a shot, or a pickup to a score. We have passes. We have it into total counts and averages and time between one pass to another pass, that sort of data can really help identify how efficient a team is at passing. This is in the same sheet. We also have hangs, and then these here are the buttons that I was showing on the app. This is a count or an average of how often that button gets pressed for an individual team. That way we had a way to turn our qualitative data into quantitative data, and we could look at that when it comes time for us to do our alliance selection data. We also have team-specific spreadsheets. So we can enter in a team at the top, and we can look at a lot of the important data that I just showed. We take what we think is extremely important for that and show it into a timeline. So we have each match for us. We have what we did in auto, and very importantly, the auto routine. So this is something that Hassan will use a lot in his match strategy, is he'll look at what routine for this alliance is really common. So for us, for example, what we did is we'd go to a 0, 4, 5, which if I go back here, 0 is our preload one, and then we'd go, well, we actually do 1 or 2 and then go to 4 or 5. And so having that and knowing what teams, for example, could do 7 and 8 really well is a really important way that you can do auto. And that's what we did at Champs. And a big reason why we picked 987 is because they had a really good 7-8 auto. And if we get that off every time, that's 4 notes from the wing line plus our 3. It's a huge lead going into teleop and something we can carry for the rest of the match. Yeah. We also have comments on here. So after the match, the scout can put comments on the team if they notice something that maybe they weren't sure was a button press, or want to add more context to why the button was pressed. They don't do it for our team for some reason. We also have a match-specific spreadsheet. So this is a very useful tool for us, where we have the match log in a sheet in our Excel file, and from there we can look at the match number, and it will put in all this data for us. So this is our alliance up here, opponent's alliance down here, and we can compare things like all the autos. What sort of routines will they do? Is anyone faster than us in auto? Do we need to be concerned about contact at the midline? If there is contact, who's going to get there first, and who's going to come out on top with the note? And are we going to be out of position and not able to recalibrate ourselves to go for the next note? So we also have teleop. So same thing as the individual, but this is now the average over their whole event. Also incorporates some pre-scouting data that we do for Champs, which is when we did our most pre-scouting. We went back and watched a couple of matches for each team and recorded the data and used that for our early matches at Champs to know about what teams are going to be capable of. We also have endgame here, and we have, it's only on the top here, but there is one that had to get cut off. This is after auto, how many points we would have, and if we're up or down after auto, which can be something that's useful for the drive team and the strategy team to know going into the match. Any questions about what we do with the data? No? All right. I'm going to pass it back off to Hassan, talk about resource management a little bit.
All right. So we've talked about how 2056 does qualitative scouting, how we do quantitative scouting. We didn't talk about how we develop an app, but we talked about the fact that we have an app. We talked about our spreadsheet. So quick overview of the way that our spreadsheet works. Like Caleb mentioned, we generate a string based off the QR code. It's inputted into a master spreadsheet. And then based off of that data, we have pivot tables for basically every metric, calculated metric, because raw data, you have to organize a little bit of the raw data. So you need a little bit of the data skills, but allows us to get all the necessary information that we want. Now, when it comes to developing a system like that, the most important thing when it comes to FRC is knowing what your resources are and knowing your limits. Knowing how many scouts you have, knowing what resources you have to put into your scouting system during development, because the 6 weeks that you have for development of your robot, it's not just your robot that you're developing. It is developing the skills for the team. It is developing the app, the scouting system for your team that's going to be useful for you come event season. So that's really important to know when you're coming to resource management. Like at kickoff, you need to be truthful with yourself and really figure out how much time and effort can you really put into developing a system and how complicated do you want it to be. You can look at resources by Team 2026. You can look at really, really good resources by Team 1678, the sister circuits. They have really good resources as well for their scouting system. So it really comes down to your resources. How many resources you have. If you have the resources to create an app, go for it. If you don't have the resources to create an app, but you still have the resources to do scouting on hand, on paper, whether that you can still do quantitative scouting on paper. You can note down how many game pieces are being scored. You can keep tally of how many game pieces are scored. And at the end of each match, every scout that is scouting can go into a spreadsheet and add those numbers. So at least you have that data to base your decision off of. That's one thing. The other thing is, don't forget about qualitative scouting either. In fact, I would say if the resources aren't there to create a very complex scouting system, you can use Statbotics to some extent, but merge Statbotics, merge the quantitative data that you're getting from Statbotics with some kind of qualitative information that you have pre-event, post-event, mid-event, right? You'll look at how the robots are performing. You'll look at, the vibes that you're getting from a robot. Like if the robot is looking good and you can't put your finger on it, but it's still looking good, you note that down. And then you try matching it with quantitative data that you get from Statbotics or your own scouting system. So it's very important to keep a note of those, a mental note of how far do you want this to go and how much data do you want to collect. Sorry? Correct, exactly. Well, you could use Google Form. You could so we in fact also use Google Forms. We use Google spreadsheet sheets, but you could get data imported from Google Forms. You're absolutely right. There we go. We have another very good suggestion. So if you guys want to use Google Forms, you guys can definitely use Google Forms. And I'm pretty sure on Chief Delphi you can find templates of creating a scouting system. So there are a lot of resources that are available. It's really about finding them. And if you don't find them, ask a question, right? On a Chief Delphi forum, right? Like ask a question. On an FRC forum, ask a question. Hey, there are over how many teams are there in FRC currently this year? You don't know.
It's nearing 4,000.
So there are going to be 4,000 teams. Out of the 4,000, even if 1% of the teams reply, that is still quite a staggering number of people that are going to be there to help you. And FRC is such a good program that a lot more teams are going to be open to helping any team develop a scouting system. So that's one thing to keep in mind when it comes to resource management. The other thing, and one of the last things that I want to talk about is Statbotics. This has been the biggest craze for the past 2 years now. Everyone after, before, during a match is looking at Statbotics. Who has not heard of Statbotics, by the way? So everyone knows Statbotics. Statbotics is more famous than some of the teams, some of the very, very, very famous teams. So I'm happy to hear that. But Statbotics is a very powerful tool that tracks each team in the world, not just in Ontario, not just at your event. Every team in the world is getting tracked. The data can offset the lack of quantitative data from a team without the resources to collect quantitative data. If you don't have the resources to create an app, if you don't have the resources to create a complex spreadsheet of data being collected, Statbotics, this tool can really offset that barrier that you have. On Team 2026, we also use Statbotics to some extent. We use it primarily as a sanity check on our quantitative data to see whether some of the data we might not necessarily collect. If we don't collect something and Statbotics has it, we might use that as a sanity check. Generally speaking, we try collecting as much information as we can. As we saw from the spreadsheets, we have like literally everything broken down into their elementary steps. But if you don't have that, it's fine because you can still use this as a baseline. The one very, very interesting thing about Statistics is it has this match predictions where you can see what the prediction is. You can see strength of schedule. You can see which team is going to be seeding what. That is actually very useful for your strategy team to come up with different strategies. If you're predicted to lose a match, your drive team and your coach can go into the match prepared that, okay, out of auto, we're going to be down on points. However, how do we create a strategy based off the data that we have to offset the fact that we're going to be down out of auto? And how do we create a strategy to really come from behind and try winning the match? And knowing that we're going to be down out of auto is essentially going to keep them in a mental state of preparedness. And it would allow them to not panic by looking at the scoreboard and seeing, oh, wow, we're down by 20 points. I don't know what to do anymore. Instead, they look at the scoreboard. They're like, okay, we're down by 20 points. We knew we were going to be down by 20 points. We're going to work on our game plan. We're going to do what we set out to do. We're going to try winning the match. Key point to note, Statistics data at points is not enough. So I would not recommend to rely solely on this. But again, when it comes down to resource management, it's all about looking at how many resources you have. How many resources you have available to you to deploy into a scouting system. It is very, very important. It is more important than your strategy that's going into a match at times. And it's super important to ensure success between teams at an event.
Just to add something in, at Champs, there was one match against 4907, and appreciate that Statistics predicted us to lose. And now if we had just used Statistics, we would have looked at that and said, oh, we're going to lose this. And without any of our own data, we wouldn't have seen that both of those teams rely on their EPA comes a lot from passing. They were both very strong at passing and less strong at directly scoring those notes compared to their passive. And so we were able to use that information to put a robot on defense on them and to slow down their passing and force them to play a strategy that they didn't want to play. So that's another reason why Statistics, it can be misleading, but if you use it with your own data, it can be very powerful.
Well, that basically wraps us up with everything that we wanted to go over with you guys. Do we have any questions, by the way?
For transferring data, do you guys need like Wi-Fi or Bluetooth during an event for transferring data to the spreadsheet?
That is a very good question. I do not know.
So for transferring the data, no, we don't. The student, the head scout, he has the spreadsheet locally, and he can use data to upload it and keep it live for everybody. But in the event where we can't do that or there is no Wi-Fi, we don't need to. And he can just have it all uploaded locally, and then we will look at it later when we get a chance to keep it updated.
Order and like to see what you could do to make the other team like not perform as well in a sense.
Yep.
At competitions like DCMP and Champs.
Yep.
If you're going to the finals and you're against people in other divisions, do you tend to scout the other divisions to see that? Or
So very good question. When it comes down to going on to Einstein, I guess that's where your question lies, right? What we do is what we did this year, for instance. I can go off of what we did this year. What we did this year was for autos, we basically timed to the 10th of a second of how long it's taking every team on every team that's on Einstein to get to the wing line notes, to the center notes, right? So that we know with confidence whether we're going to be losing or winning a battle to the midline. The second thing is it's a lot about vibes as well when it comes to such last minute planning, because in the hour between when your division ends and when Einstein starts, you have 1 hour, right? So it's really hard to scout all those teams within 1 hour. That's where Statistics really comes into play. However, the one key point that I mentioned that don't rely solely on Statistics, 1690 was predicted to lose every single match on Einstein, and they won Worlds. So what I don't know what I would have done if I was on 1690, but what I can perhaps see what happened. A, they probably didn't care about what Statistics was saying, rightfully so. B, if they saw that Statistics is saying that they're going to be losing every match based off how they've played so far, they can change their strategy. They can quickly look, and this is where the answer to your question comes as well. You can look at 2 matches from an alliance, and you can figure out roughly what their strategy is going to be. Very few teams in a limbs is going to do a strategy and then change it if they're winning. If you're winning, it's what they say, right? If it's
broke, don't fix it.
if yeah, exactly. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So if a team's winning, if they won their division, they're not going to change their strategy, right? So you can look at their finals matches and you can figure out roughly what strategy they're going with, and try to figure out a strategy to counteract that. Otherwise, if you know you're just going to beat them outright, you keep your own strategy. You don't have to outstrat their strategy at all.
Any other questions?
How do you train the new members of your team to do this scouting? Not just the app, but all the structure and the concepts about this scouting.
In terms of like strategy and like qualitative
Yeah.
scouting. So that's something for new members, we don't really focus on them with that. That more comes with experience on the team. So after the students spend a year or two, as part of the quantitative scouts with the iPads, they get to understand what to look for in a robot, what looks good when they're on the field. And that's something that more comes with experience. And that's why generally we have more mentors doing qualitative and more students doing quantitative.
More mentors.
Yeah, if you have someone available to do that. Otherwise, it just takes a student who wants to understand why is this team good. They just can watch matches and figure it out. And even with just a little bit of guidance of pointing out, hey, look at this, what this team did. That was really good. See how they didn't stop moving. They knew exactly where they wanted to go and how to avoid a defender, for example.
And then to answer your question slightly more as well, in terms of quantitative scouting on the app, once we have developed the app, let's say we're competing week 2, we're going to have our scouts sit during like a week 1 event and just practice scouting, right? Like just collect garbage data.
Usually we make the same with it.
Yeah.
Usually we have a meet before we start in the school or in someone's house.
Because practice makes perfect, right? Like if you don't practice, if your first time scouting is at an event, there are 9 out of 10 times you're going to make a mistake, which is fine. But if you can practice that before an event, it's usually better, because at the end of the day with data, data can skew your decisions quite heavily.
I think there was a question in the back too.
Your qualitative notes from your mentors and your scouts, do you get that on the floor while you're doing match track, or do you look at that after?
So
It's a bit of both.
what we actually ended up doing at Champs was we used Discord for our team communication. You could probably use Slack as well. If you have a communication channel, what we ended up doing was our quantitative scouts with the iPad, they have a section where they can add qualitative notes, right? What we ended up doing was we created a channel or a group for each team, and within each team, anyone on the team that's looking at any team, right? Even if I'm not a qualitative scout, but I'm just walking around, I watch a robot do something very cool, I will literally write it down in that like team 1998 did this, or team 1860 did this. Very, very cool thing. And then when I'm down on the floor trying to figure out strat, A, I have the quantitative data. And then B, I have my phone on me. I can quickly go on Discord, pick up that team, see if there's any notes from any scouts. And I can use that to my advantage as well when I'm doing my strat.
Any other questions?
Well,
Do you have some points that you use to evaluate the quantitative data for defense?
Oh, like how do we
Yeah.
rate defense? So that is also kind of hard to track. We don't really have like a set way to do it quantitatively. It's more just looking at a team, and when they're playing defense, do they also look smooth in how they move? Are they, for this year, are they blocking the right lanes? Are they positioning themselves in a way that actually impedes the progress of the team trying to grab a no or score a no? Are they getting pushed around easily? That's a big one. We want teams for defense, like how Orbit and 321 won champs. They won with a push that they pushed Madtown into a robot climbing, and that won them champs. So that's another thing we look. That's a big one. Is can they be pushed around easily?
Defense is very qualitative.
Yeah.
It's very, very qualitative and very dependent on vibes. And it also depends on who the defense bot is playing defense on, right?
In Brazil, sorry, I try English, okay? In Brazil, and try this point. For example, my team, your team have 10 points in the play, in the match. My team played with you. You yes, 8, 7. I make the curve is down. I noticed my team, every team, the curve every down. I think this the form the quantitative defense. Sorry, my English does. The idea is, for example, the 1816, every 10 max. In 10 max, the points, the opponent is down. It measures this.
You're right, it does. This would allow us to quantitatively identify defense, right? So to your point, the only way for us to figure that out is if we have some indication that a team has been playing defense. What we do is, in fact, in our quantitative data on our app, we actually have a note that identifies whether a team is playing defense or not. And when we look at the entire data of the team, we can see whether that team has played defense. And if they have been playing so much defense, we can then go back to their matches and see who they played defense against. But we don't necessarily have a very, very distinct quantitative metric for it. It's very much qualitative, and it's very much after the fact do we manually look at match and see how a team has performed in terms of defense.
Most use like the quality of defense is the direct comparison between two teams for line selection, and for an individual match in quals we just look at can they play defense, have they played defense, and I think that's all we have time for. Thank you for your time, everybody.
Thank you very much. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope it wasn't too sleepy.
We're still here.
Yeah, same. Not bad.
Until this guy does presentations. What do you mean?